Well, I want to read a passage from the wonderful Marilynne Robinson's last book. I don't mean last book, I mean latest book, don't I? Lila, which is part of a trilogy about after Home and Gilead. But those are books about very articulate people, whereas this is about a person, a woman, who has really no language at all. No language, as it were, for thought, no language in which she can actually examine her own condition. She can read, she can write, but she can do very little else. And I think it's wonderful to have a book, as it were, written about inarticulacy of that kind, because how do you, in that case, examine yourself, think about your own life? This is the point where Lila, who's been told by the woman who adopted her, Doll, she's called, a vagrant, so she becomes a vagrant. Doll tells her she must never, never, never go near a brothel. And here she is in the brothel, but not as a worker in the brothel, as of all things, a housekeeper. This girl who's never had a house or a home has become a housekeeper, and a very efficient one, in the brothel. Here she is in the basement, the cellar of the house, and in effect thinking. But thinking means memory, and means talking to herself. So she's two people, just standing there in the dark. Felt so good to her. She'd get up, all black and filthy with the coal dust. When she came upstairs, who knew what they would say? And that was all right, because she had this time to be quiet with herself. How long had it been? She was standing there, leaning against the warmth with her eyes closed, and she began to have bright dreams about waking up before dawn with Doll's arm for a pillow, and the sound of a fire, and Duane talking with whoever else was awake first. It was always Duane who got the fire going, and then Arthur would start the coffee when they had it, and Doll coaxed her awake. They would fry whatever there was, the light coming up and the birds singing, dew on everything, beaded on cobwebs, so it felt like a little rain when you broke one. Then Doll looked at her and said, "You're standing in a coal hole." No, Lila must have said that. She'd started talking to herself, and they teased her about it. She knew nothing about anything but field work and making change. And housekeeping from the time in Tammany, when she lived in that town where they didn't hang Doll, and she worked in the store. Sometimes she would walk out at night, because then you can see into people's houses. The accounts always came out just right when she was working there, never a penny short. She was saving up a little money. There was nothing wrong with working indoors when the place was as clean as that, and smelt as good. Ham and coffee and cheese and apples and flour, spools of ribbon and bolts of pretty cloth. She'd watch how the women were dressed, and what they did with their hair, listen to the way they talked. She really wanted to know those things. Well, she'd been learning some things lately, that's for sure. You're standing there in the dark, in a filthy old cellar. I like it down here. That was her talking to herself again. I ain't cut out for this life. Doll said, "I tried to tell you about it, didn't I tell you?" "No, you didn't. Just to stay away from whorehouses. Just that, and you got that scar. Anyway, I had a decent job. And then you come bleeding over everything, fouling the place." She nodded. "I should have given that more thought. But where's my knife? Why you let that woman have my knife?" "It's the only thing I had to give her." "That don't make sense. Lila was the one who said that. But Doll would have said it." Well, you'll have to read the book to work out this dialogue which is going on in her own mind between the woman who had adopted her as a baby from an abusive household and her own sense that she wants somewhere to belong. She wants what Doll had. Doll had her. Who does she have? She has nobody. She's going to find somebody. It's a wonderful book, this very articulate sense of what it's like to be inarticulate and to have no words in which to think until gradually she's going to gain them from the man that she marries, John Ames. So read it. It's worth reading, more than most books published this year or last year.